Hi, and welcome to Something to Talk About. I'm Linda McNamee, and for the next hour, we are going to learn many facets of foster care, which I'm really looking forward to. But before we begin, if you have a question for our guests whom you will meet momentarily, you can always give us a call at 781-270-9199. Or if you think of it afterwards, you can always email me at talk@bcattv.org. If you also have a suggestion for a future topic, I love getting ideas, so it's there if you need it. I would like to thank the crew for this evening. We're a little crew light tonight. We have Chris Flaherty, staff member extraordinaire, making sure that everybody behaves themselves and everything runs smoothly, and Colleen Moore, who is a dedicated volunteer who's been helping me out on this show and many other occasions. So thank you both. And last but definitely not least, I want to thank my husband Paul for staying home for Daddy Date Night. Hopefully Gwyneth and Evan have finished their homework and they will let you turn off the TV soon. So, all of the administrative work aside, I would like to introduce my wonderful guests for this evening. We have Courtney Edge-Mattos. Did I pronounce that right?
Mattos.
Mattos, okay. I knew I should have checked. And Bob Costa.
Yes.
And both of you work for JRI, which is the Justice Resource Institute. And you're both based kind of South Shore area, or would you call that South Shore?
Southeastern Mass.
The southeastern
Southeastern.
region. Yeah.
Okay, so down like Fall River area.
Yes.
Well, thank you very much for coming. And I'm looking forward to finding more about foster care. So what it takes to be a foster parent, how widespread is the foster care system. We'll get into details in a moment. But as we begin, can you guys get to decide who gets to go first. Tell me a little bit about yourselves, where you grew up, how you came to the greater Boston area, and what made you decide to get into foster care work?
Ladies first.
Thank you. There we go.
Nice job.
So I grew up, my family moved around a lot, so we lived various places in New England, then down south, and came back to this area for high school.
Okay.
So I graduated, went to University of Rhode Island, and after that I was a preschool teacher
Okay.
for a couple of years, and I was looking for something more. I wanted something that worked with families, worked with children a little bit more. And I found my way to a program in Attleboro, Massachusetts for teen parents. So it was a pre-independent living program for teen moms.
Teen independent living. So basically they were on their own.
They were in apartments in our building. We had
but
a
they
staff.
weren't, they probably didn't have like family support.
They had limited family supports in many cases. Some had more active families, but a lot of them had limited supports. And so this was to help them gain independent living skills, gain parenting skills, gain self-confidence, and be prepared to parent on their own independently in the world. And it's a program through Department of Children and Families. It's funded through the Department of Children and Families. And I learned a ton. And something that I kept noticing was for our girls that were very successful, the successful moms that we were working with had very strong supports in their lives. They had adults that made a difference. And for many of these girls, they had been in the foster care system. And for many of these girls, their supports were former foster parents who they'd remained in contact with. And then a position came available with the foster care program, and I was kind of ready for a change, and I jumped at the opportunity, and I've been here since.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
You're up.
Well, I was born and raised in Fall River, and made my way and graduated from Bridgewater State University. And then from Bridgewater State, while I was going to school, to pay my way to school, I was working at what it's called St. Vincent's Home for Children. And at the time, it was kind of transitioning. It was almost an orphanage at the time. We used to live there, so I would live with a partner. Yeah. They don't do this anymore.
Kind of like dorms or something.
This is, but I would live with a, we have 8 children in a cottage, and I would work with a partner, and we'd be on for 15 days and off for 15
Oof.
days. That included.
That's intense.
It was. That included weekends. That included, during the week, and while the children were in school, I would go to school, and then when I come back, it was time to take care of the kids.
Oh, wow.
So I did that for 11 years, me and a partner, and then from there, kind of moved on to being a case manager, working for another agency. So I would work in foster homes with children who were in foster care. Did that for a while, and then ended up becoming a supervisor, and then a program director. The challenge I always enjoyed is that a lot of the children that we work with don't have a voice. And one of the things that I always enjoyed was being able to turn a no into a yes. So that was one of the things.
That kids would love to see you.
Yeah, it was always. It started when I was working at St. Vincent's. We run a pool table, and everybody would say, "No, you can't get a pool table; it's too expensive." But we would get a pool table. We somehow got one, legally, of course. And
Of course.
And that's the kind of thing that I found out. And again, working with children, they'd have difficulties in school, and you'd hear that, no, this child will never go to high school, or this child will have a difficult time, will not go to college. And I always it was always that challenge.
I was about to say.
Yeah.
Sounds like a challenge.
Yeah.
I'm going to prove you wrong.
Absolutely. And then later on, after doing that, I ended up going to grad school at my later years, and kind of studied the organizational part of running, running care. I mean, not only is there a clinical side, but there's also a business side of running an office. And you got to keep your employees happy. You've got to be able to understand how things work and be able to work together. And it can get a little complicated at times.
Understood.
But it's good. It's a good thing. So we're excited.
So JRI actually seems to cover a lot of stuff.
Yes.
Now, you both work in the foster and adoptive branch. What are some of the other things that the organization covers?
Well,
just topic-wise. I mean, you don't have to go into detail.
JRI is we're only one small portion of what JRI does. JRI is a large organization. Actually, it was just this year, they're considered one of the best companies to work for in Massachusetts, through the Boston Globe, large companies.
Yeah, you guys.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a big deal. But they have over 100 different programs throughout the JRI family.
Oh, wow.
There's, they work with homeless. There's a homeless section where they actually have homes that they work with the homeless population. Okay. There's a trauma center that is actually world renowned.
Wow.
There's work around after school programming. There's just a variety, which I know I'm missing a ton of the different programs that are offered.
We do a lot of behavior. I'm sorry to interrupt.
No, that's fine. No.
We do a lot of behavioral health work. So going into families' homes that are having challenges with their families, with their children, and kind of clinically supporting them and helping them stabilize.
Now, do you also work with the schools?
We work with schools. We have some specialized schools within the JRI family. And then we have various programs that go into schools and help support kids with special needs. We have an educational advocacy program that is fantastic. So that helps parents who have kids who need an individualized education plan, and it helps them really get the services that their children need in order to succeed.
And that's not just the foster families, that's
not just foster families, that's anybody.
Okay.
There's also, which you can't forget, there's also residential facilities that are very well known throughout the state. And there's also a teen parenting program. So it does run
a little bit of programs we're forgetting, and for our sister programs we're forgetting, we apologize.
Look on the website. There you go. Look on the website. Everything's there. So for the foster care portion, which we'll focus on tonight, because everything else could be its own series, what geographic area do you primarily cover? Is it like all of Massachusetts, all of New England?
The eastern section of Mass really is a fair statement. So we have homes down on Cape Cod, and we have homes all the way up to Lowell, and everywhere in between. So we have a huge swath of geography that we really cover, and we're always looking to grow.
So how prevalent is foster care? Because, not being involved in it, I don't really hear about it much until like Facebook or something, you know.
Well, I mean, foster care has been around for years, and I think that over the years it is kind of, you know, I think at first it was more of a community-based, you know, type of, you know, help the, you know, help a community out, help a family out. But it's morphed into something a little bit more now. It's more regulated. It's you know, there's a lot of regulations that need to be followed. There's in the type of youngsters that we deal with in intensive foster care might need a little bit more help than a traditional foster home might give. Again, there's different levels of behavior that you work with, and in what we do, it's a little bit more intense than a traditional foster home per se. You know, at this point, you know, foster care is needed throughout the state. You know, there's a big opiate crisis going on at this point. You know, DCF, Department of Children and Families, you know, they are constantly assessing risk, and when they find that a child might be at risk, that's when, you know, a situation might occur where they might be placed in DCF care, and then now they might need a foster home to have that youngster live in until the family unit can get, you know, get the help and support they might need.
Okay, yeah, because I was kind of wondering, how is a child identified as needing a foster care situation, and then what's the process to, you know, get a child into a compatible foster care foster home?
That's a key word. Compatible.
Compatible.
You know, it's not like having a garage and having cars. I have 5 cars and I have 5 garage spaces, so that works.
Done.
We can have 50 foster homes.
Okay.
But it's finding 50 matches. It's finding children that, we're not finding children for families, we're finding families for children. We need to find the right family for each individual child.
So how do you do that?
It's a
Through
process.
extensive analysis. So we ask an endless number of questions of our families just during the home study process when we're getting to know them and we're really assessing if they're prepared for foster care. And when a child is coming into foster care, kids come into foster care, I would say generally through three ways. There could be an abuse or neglect allegation against their parents, and so DCF, the Department of Children and Families, has to assess risk. And if they feel like if the child remained in that home, they would be posed to too much risk, then DCF will choose to remove the child. There are other situations where there might be a tragedy within the family, so parents may be terminally ill or something, and there's nobody else to care for that child. So the child could come through that way, or it could be a voluntary situation where the parent says, I'm going through something right now where I can't parent this child. And so they'll request for the state to step in and have an out-of-home placement arranged.
Okay, so foster kids aren't necessarily lacking parents. It's just they don't have a safe environment to thrive in at a certain point.
Yep.
Okay.
So once that's identified, DCF, the Department of Children and Families, tries to know this child. It might be a child that they actually know very well.
What age are we talking about for a child?
Newborn to 22.
To 22.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
I wasn't sure if it was like the 18 cutoff, so it's up to 22.
No, the state.
So
it gets a little. It gets a little.
Those 18 to 22 is a little fuzzy.
Yeah, that's
okay.
So at age 18, kids have the right to, it's called signing in. So if they want to remain with DCF and utilize those supports that DCF is able to offer, they can sign in for voluntary services until they're 22. Which is wonderful because most 18-year-olds are not ready to go out in the world and just do it all on their own.
When I was 18, yeah, definitely.
Right.
In the state of Massachusetts, I have to say, in my experiences, not speaking for the state of Massachusetts, but in my experiences, they are more than willing to work with a young adult. You know, when a young adult turns 18 years old.
Sorry, you're on your own.
And that's where a lot of times, you know, DCF will say, you know, this young adult is going to school, has an opportunity to go to college, and will offer the supports to that, you know, to that young adult.
Now, can they stay in the foster system or?
Yep.
Okay.
So if they've been in a foster home, they're comfortable in that placement, that family is committed to them, they could stay there until age 22.
Okay.
And then after they're 22, if they have that relationship with the foster family, we see lifelong relationships that are created out of these placements, which is wonderful. So, but to your original point, you know, how does a child come into care and how do we figure out the matching piece? DCF does extensive work to try to understand what the child's needs are, what their background is.
Okay.
We try to be mindful of their geographic region. Where are they coming from? How can we keep them in the same area so that we require the least amount of change of this child?
Okay.
And then we look for a foster home that is going to be able to provide for those needs.
Now, how long does this process take? Because if, depending on the circumstances,
Yes.
this child might need an immediate placement, and it sounds like it could take weeks to months, maybe. Well,
So
probably
again,
months.
it all depends on the factor. So we might, for instance, we might receive a phone call. You know, Bob, we have an emergency placement. We have a sibling set that maybe had been removed from the home the previous night.
Okay.
We don't have a lot of information, but we really need a home for this
Right.
sibling set to come to. So what we will do is see if we can, you know, get as much information as we can get from
Yeah.
the
Okay.
department, and then make an educated decision about what foster parent might match that, you know, that
Oh, okay.
situation. You know, we'll get it for newborns. We'll get it runs the gamut. You know, it all
Okay.
depends on the situation. You know, oftentimes if there's a youngster that might be in a group home or is waiting to come from what they call a star placement, which is a shelter placement, because there's no homes available. So a child will be identified. We'll get all of the identifying information that we need, and then we can make, again, a proper placement, a proper match.
Okay.
So it kind of runs the gamut between
Yeah.
emergency and being a little bit more planful in
Yeah.
an emergency.
The amount of information we're able to get definitely varies. The
Okay.
more information we get, I think the better the match you're able to make.
Yeah.
So,
Now, are there circumstances where the family may not be compatible, and then what happens there?
so we start talking with our families immediately at the point of doing the home study and working with them to become foster parents about the need to be willing to give it their all for every
Okay.
child. We don't want a child to come through the door and they go, ooh, you know what, that habit's really irritating, you have to leave.
Okay.
That's not the goal. And it's not why anybody gets into this to be a foster
Right.
parent. So we try to put supports into place, so that might be therapeutic supports, putting in a therapeutic mentor for a child, working on certain behavioral interventions. But if safety is an issue in the home, if the child is unable to be safe in the home, if there's really a very significant issue, if we identify that the foster family is not going to be able to meet the child's needs,
Okay.
then we would look for another
Like if
foster
the
home.
child has like special needs.
If they had medical needs that weren't
Medical, okay.
previously diagnosed, and this is a family that's not going to be able to attend to those medical needs, that
Well,
would
I'm also
necessitate
thinking
a
like
new
the
placement.
emergency placement. We think this
Right.
is a good match,
Right.
but
Yeah.
Exactly. And then, and what we will do as well, we usually have a weekly meeting and talk about, you know, do we consider any homes susceptible to maybe a child moving? And then we'll, as Courtney said, we'll look at the situation. Do we need to put extra supports inside the home? Do we need to, you know, speak with the foster parent and see what might work, you know, with the foster parent? Is there an after-school program that we might be able to put in
Right.
place? Does JRI have another service that we might be able to put
Yeah.
into the
Okay.
home? So we will look at all aspects. The last thing we want to do is to move somebody once they're placed in the home. It happens,
Yeah.
but we do everything we can to not have that happen. So,
okay.
And we're partnering with DCF throughout that process, because DCF is the child's legal guardian. So when kids come into
okay.
foster care, DCF has to go to court, and a judge has to approve that that child necessitates an out-of-home placement.
Okay.
DCF obtains what's called a care and protection order, which makes them the guardian for the child. So if we're talking about moving kids from home to home, that's their kid. They're the guardian of that child. So they have to be in agreement with that plan and think that that's the right choice.
Now, how many families are we talking typically? Are we talking hundreds, thousands, just a couple dozen? I mean, ballpark.
Yeah, I mean, there's, I'm not sure of the state figures, but I know within our program, We currently have approximately 55 families that
Okay.
that are actually licensed foster parents. They need to be licensed, and of those 55, we have a few that might be just temporary respite homes, we call them, where
Okay.
they'll provide a respite option for maybe a full-time, where maybe the foster parent, the primary foster parent, maybe they have a family event that they can't bring the child to,
Okay.
so we'll place them in respite. Or sometimes you just need a break from each other, and so.
Oh no, that never happened.
It's the equivalent of going to grandma's house,
Yeah,
right? So you go to
exactly.
grandma's house for the weekend.
So it's a situation where right now we do have a pretty a good network. However, the need for homes, the amount of referrals that we get certainly outstrips what we have at this point.
Okay.
And you'd rather have a child, if they can't be with a family member or somebody that's with somebody that's aligned with the family. If you need to go to foster care, you're better off in foster care than going to a group home or going into a shelter, temporary shelter.
Okay.
And that's the hope, is that we can gather additional homes. I mean, it's something that is needed not only in our program but throughout the state.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, I do want to find out about becoming a foster home, but before we get into that, one more question, maybe.
Sure.
Is there like a typical length of a child remaining in foster care? Are we talking weeks, months, years? I mean,
The good thing
I'm
is
sure it varies, but
it's changed, which is a good thing. So years ago, it would be a longer stay. It could be anywhere from maybe 1 to 2 to 3 years sometimes. But there's a lot of work that's being done with families today. So what ends up happening is, if you get a referral and the ultimate goal for that child is to go back home, and they call it like a reunification,
Okay.
what we will do is start immediately at intake to start working with the birth family or whoever the guardian is, and really partner with DCF, partner with the family to be able to get that child home soon. And DCF, and once the parents, whatever supports they need in their life, once they meet those goals, and once DCF is comfortable with the goals in the court case, then that child will go back home. And so the stay is a lot less, and most times it's less than a year, which is good for the child. You don't want anybody in foster care, if they're scheduled to go home or as a reunification, you don't want to extend it for that long.
Right.
And you want to be able to partner with the birth family. You want the birth family to be part of the process. That is very important. And it makes the child stay in a foster home that much better. They know that the foster family and the birth parents are aligned. The child feels comfortable with that.
and also supports that safety net that we were talking about
Absolutely.
earlier.
Absolutely. Matter of fact, as an example, we have a big holiday party coming up this Friday. So we have made it a point to invite our birth families, where it's appropriate, to come to the party.
I like that, where it's appropriate.
Yeah, where it's appropriate, come to the party and be with your child, be
Yeah.
with the foster family. Integrate with work with each other. Meet the staff, and that's the whole idea of a good reunification.
Yeah.
It's to start from day one.
Now, how frequently is it a situation where the child is unable to go back, and then that child goes through the adoption process? How frequently does that happen?
So these numbers may not be perfect, but I would say it's about 25% to 30% of the kids in the program move on to the adoption tract. So
Okay.
an adoption plan is developed.
Okay.
What is confusing, I think, a lot of times, is that doesn't mean that their parents have dropped off the face of the earth. It doesn't mean that the parents are uninvolved. Typically, if a child has an adoption plan, DCF is still working with the parents. They're hoping that whatever barrier there is to returning the child home
Okay.
can be alleviated.
Okay.
So even if a child has an adoption plan, it doesn't mean that 100% that they won't be able to return home. There are kids within that sort of 25 to
Okay.
30% that's not going to happen for
Okay.
them. And so then DCF will start recruiting for an adoptive family.
Okay.
They'll reach out to their kinship, their relations, So aunts, uncles, cousins, grandmas, grandpas, the whole shebang. They'll look and see if those people might be options. Sometimes in other states, you know, you've got somebody who didn't even know that the kids were in foster care, and they go, well, I could take them, you know, and then states work with each other for that to happen. And then we'll look sort of to the general population and see if there can be some matches made.
Okay, so how would someone, what are you looking for in a foster family? So someone who would be willing to accept a foster child.
So I think there are some hard and fast criteria that you have to meet. So one of the first steps that we take is running a query on somebody who's expressed interest. So you're running a background check.
Right.
There are some offenses that we can waive, right? So if you had a parking ticket in 1972, you forgot to pay it, you had a suspended license, then you got that taken care of, we can probably move through your parking ticket situation.
Fair enough.
There are more severe crimes that really prohibit us from moving forward.
Oh, I'm sure.
So
we won't even go into that.
Right, exactly. So that can be a stopping point right there.
Okay.
But if we can move through, then we're also looking to see that you're financially stable. The income that you currently have meets your current family's income. There is a stipend that's associated with foster care.
Okay.
You're caring for a child. But the stipend that you receive needs to go to the care of that child.
Right.
It's not something that you can retire on and like, oh, this is all I'm going to do.
I'm going to buy a new car.
Right,
you know.
no, that's probably not going to happen.
It was a joke.
Yeah, I got that. So we're looking for financially stable people. We're looking for emotionally stable people. So people that have good coping skills, people that can deal with stress, because this is a stressful endeavor. This is a hard thing to ask people to do.
Yeah.
We need people who are flexible because our day changes on a dime.
Well, yeah, you might get that phone call at midnight saying, hey, look, we have a kid that needs a home.
Right.
Now.
Right. So we're looking for people that can kind of think outside the box, that are okay with change, because foster care is change. It's a lot of change. We're looking for physical standards. Is their home appropriate?
Now, does the person have to, or does the family have to own a home, or could they be in a rental situation?
You could absolutely be in a rental situation. That would be fine. But the child has to have a bedroom that they would be sleeping in. They can't sleep on a couch.
Could they share a room with like a sibling?
So we actually don't permit that within our program.
Okay.
It's not a state regulation.
It is allowed, but
We find that it's better for safety and security. The child feels more secure when they're moving into a home and we say, this is your bedroom. Nobody is going to be in here with you. You're going to be able to feel safe in this space.
Okay.
And it also, I think it alleviates some concerns because we've had children that have been harmful to other children. So if they're sharing bedrooms, that's a bit of a risk. If they're not sharing bedrooms, we've just taken some of the risk out of this quotient, I guess. So what are some other things that we look for?
Could families take in more than one foster child at a time?
So
these are where the regulations can get a little different. So in intensive foster care, the regulations are you can only take up to 2 intensive foster children, with a maximum of 4, including 2 biological children. So a maximum of 4 in a home.
Okay.
So if you had 2 kids that were under 18, so you had a 9-year-old and a 7-year-old.
Which I do.
Oh,
okay.
There we go.
and you had the correct number of bedrooms.
Right. Then you could take 2 additional placements.
Okay.
Right. Your children could share a bedroom. That's something that's up to parents. That's fine. But for our kids that we're placing in your home, we require that they have separate bedrooms.
Okay. What if they were siblings themselves?
And that's a great question, because when we do get a referral for siblings, we will look at the age of a sibling and to see, is it appropriate? We will not always say no to a room share. So if it's a young sibling set, you know, if we feel with the information that DCF provides that there might not be any concern for safety between the children, we might approve that. You know, especially if they're only 1 year old or 2 and a 1, and usually it's pretty safe. But when we're looking at a little older, an 11, 12, 13, we like to give them their own separate rooms. I mean, I grew up with 3 brothers. I loved my own room. So.
Well, I'm just also thinking, though, if siblings were separated from their home, they might want that security of, you know, a sibling.
And we've definitely had that.
So it's more of a case-by-case basis.
It's a case-by-case basis. It's a clinical assessment that's made.
Okay.
So
I'm not trying to think of every possible scenario.
No, I mean, it's a
when
valid
you mention
question.
siblings, I'm like, okay, which siblings? You know, the siblings that were there, the siblings.
And again, it goes by, you know, why were the children removed from the home? You know, and again, it gets into the history of what happened in the home. So we look at that history. We look at why the children were removed from the home, and then make a decision within the program. You know, is it appropriate to put, you know, the 2 siblings in a room? We don't really run into a problem with it. You know, if we have if we have a foster parent that's willing to take a sibling, we can go up. You know, we can do what they call an overcapacity waiver if necessary. If there's 3 siblings, we ran into a situation where there were 9 siblings that were referred.
Wow.
And absolutely in a referral.
We couldn't take them all in one.
We couldn't do that. But.
No.
You're in a really big house, you know,
Really
10-bedroom house. Yeah, okay.
And every time I say that story about a sibling set of 9 that's being referred, they'll say, "Really, Bob?" I'm like, "Really?" You know, and it was actually it was rather fascinating to be able to place and try to get those siblings close enough to each other
So
that they can continue to visit.
Okay.
Yeah.
And continue to visit mom and dad.
Because trying to find one foster house for all 9 would. Probably don't have too many of those options.
No.
But to be able to find appropriate homes within, and again, trying to keep them within the same geographical region, trying to work it so that, you know, they can visit during the course of the week or maybe a weekend. And so far, it's been relatively successful. And then, you know, and again, getting to the reunification, slowly but surely, the children are going back home.
Yeah.
So as mom and dad are doing, you know, complying with the plan and the agreements, children are going home, which is a great thing.
Cool.
So,
okay, more criteria to become a foster parent.
Okay.
Because I interrupted you.
That's
sorry.
okay. That's all right. So there are dog breeds that you're not allowed to have.
Breeds, not just dog versus no dog. It's
not dog versus no dog. You may have a dog. That's fine. We
Okay.
can't license homes that have pit bulls, German Shepherds, or Rottweilers.
Why is that?
So I think that's
You know I was going to ask that.
No, absolutely, because I asked that too, because I love dogs. I don't
I
discriminate
mean, because
amongst
some
breeds.
pit bulls can be, you know,
I
the
know.
most gentle animal ever.
I
and
know.
then there could be a Chihuahua who's
Yeah.
like, you know, nicknamed Killer.
Right. So, and the breed ban, I think, actually comes from data that supports what dogs have the most deadly bites.
Okay.
So if a dog is going to bite you, Chihuahuas can be very bitey, but are you probably going to die from a Chihuahua's bite? It's unlikely,
Okay.
right? If a Rottweiler bites you, might you die from that? You could be extensively
some
wounded,
pretty
right?
serious damage.
Yes, exactly. So that's a state regulation that doesn't vary from foster program to foster program. They can't place children who are under the age of 12 in homes with Rottweilers, Pit Bulls, or German Shepherds. And then if you have a dog that is a mix of those breeds, if it was like a Chihuahua with a Rottweiler, first off, I'd have lots of questions.
Well, yeah, but
but you would
Just not
probably
real
say,
good at-
okay, well that's a small mix with a big mix. We're probably going to end up somewhere
like
in the
a
middle.
golden
That might be
retriever
okay.
or collie German Shepherd mix. 'Cause
Exactly, but
collies
if you
are
had
really-
a Rottweiler German Shepherd mix, we'd say, well, those are 2 of the banned breeds put together. We're going to have to pass on this one.
Okay.
Yeah. Does that clarify
I
that?
think so.
Okay.
And then-
Single people can be foster parents. Married people can be foster parents.
As long as they're financially
As
secure.
long as they're financially secure. We have multi-generational foster families where a 30-something-year-old man or woman has chosen to be a foster parent, and their parent lives with them. So it's multi-generational, which is fantastic. We've had friends that live together that have gone in to do foster care. They're not romantically linked, but they're committed to this, and they're just going to go in on it at the same time.
Cool.
So sort of who you are and the box you check in your demographics really has no bearing. You have to be age 21 or over.
Okay.
There is no upper end cap to that. So we don't discriminate on age. If you are healthy enough, if you are in a good enough space, then we welcome you to be a foster parent.
Now, how frequently are, I'm thinking if children are separated from their birth families, they probably have some emotional issues going on. How frequently do they have other either developmental issues or physical limitations? I mean, does it seem to be more, not popular is not the right word, but more prevalent?
I think it's more prevalent than within the general population.
I would say so, and I think that most of the children that we get referred have suffered some type of trauma. So again, based on what the referral looks like, so when a child is coming into care, you can pretty much, based on that information, you can pretty much say that that child has experienced some type of trauma in their lifetime. So, once we identify that too, then we know what we need to do in terms of getting, weekly, we'll do counseling, make sure we get counseling, get the proper supports in place needed for the child. And a lot of times we do get a lot of history. So that child a lot of times might be already seeing a counselor, or there might be services that were in place already in the house before removal. So we'll see a lot of that already. It's those emergencies that you might not see it. You might have an emergency removal because of of a certain situation, and you might not have a lot of information on a child. We'll lean on the foster parent who will provide us a weekly detailed log to say, hey, I'm noticing this behavior from this child. Might be afraid to take a shower at night, or might be afraid to sleep at night. Kind of gives us an idea that something might have been going on at night. It just it's a matter of like doing a little bit of detective work, to be honest with you, is what it comes down to.
Now, I think in the introductions you had touched upon this indirectly. How often do children in foster care become parents?
It happens.
I mean, what happens in a case like
Sure.
that? I know there's no absolute, but
There's no absolute at all. So young moms have the right to make choices. So they have the right to choose to try to parent that child.
Okay.
They have the right to make an adoption plan for that child.
Okay.
They have a right to terminate that pregnancy. So it's working with them to identify what it is that they want to do.
Okay.
If they choose to have the child, DCF does not automatically take custody of their child. That might happen, but it also might not. A lot of times I would say that it doesn't.
Okay.
They might be able to remain in the foster home. And that foster
That was,
family
like, my
might then
next
really
question
become a big
is-
support for them.
Okay.
If that's not possible, then they might move to a teen parenting program.
Okay.
So, it's certainly very individualized. There might be a family member that comes sort of out of the woodwork, so to speak, and says, hey, I could help her. She could move in with me, and I can help her parent the baby.
And I think to your point when we were talking a little earlier about the proper matches, that's how we would match a home. So if we had a referral that came in and said, hey, we have a teen mom who has their own child, we'll look at a foster home and say, do we have a foster parent who would be a good role model that will work with the with the child, the young mom and the baby, and be able to role model.
Well, I'm also thinking, though, what happens if the child is already in foster care?
Right.
And if it's...
The child would stay, in most circumstances, in my experiences, child would stay in the foster home, and again, the DCF would make a determination, where the baby stays with mom, if the baby's old, if the child's old enough, or the young mom's old enough to care for the child, or if DCF feels that it might not be an appropriate situation, they might take custody of the child and then allow the foster parent to be the one that's fostering the baby as well. So mom might not have custody, but the foster parent might be overseeing the baby.
So mom and baby could essentially be placed in the same home.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
It would be considered an additional place. That's when the rules get a. That's when the rules get a little. It would be considered.
Gray area.
Yeah, it would be considered an additional placement. So instead of mom being the caretaker or the guardian for the baby, the foster parent would be overseeing the child, the young mom and the baby.
Okay.
But we've seen teen parents do amazing things.
Absolutely.
We've seen them absolutely bloom into fantastic parents. And I think they look at their children as an opportunity, because probably they've experienced some things in their childhood that were traumatic and painful, and they don't want to replicate that for their children. And so they really, they just take on a new tone and really sort of find their footing, which is wonderful.
Yay.
Yeah.
Could be related, might not be, but you had mentioned that you partner with DCF. Are there other organizations that you often partner with, and what are some of those organizations?
Well, I think that DCF is the guardian of the child.
Okay.
So that's our main partnership. But then in the community, we might partner with certain organizations that might provide after-school services, or they might provide additional counseling service. I mean, even though JRI does provide that, depending on the geographic region or depending on a child coming in on intake might have certain services in place already with another agency. So we will partner and work with other agencies as well. To whatever support that child needs, if we deem it's appropriate, we're going to go for it. We're going to get that support for that child, or young teen, or young adult. It all
Well, under
depends.
22, it sounds like they're still considered. Okay.
Like for instance, we have a young man. He's 21 years old. He's been with this particular foster parent for a good 5-6 years. He has no other family. He is going to be going to a trade school. So these are the stories that you don't hear about. His case manager is working closely with DCF and working with this young adult to get him a scholarship or to get him some type of money to be able to attend school. And right now they are planning for him to actually live at the school. So they're getting ready for what is he going to need in his dorm? What will he need? And work closely with DCF and get him to the trade school that he wants to go to. My experiences over many years, I've had young men and women go to college, graduate from college. That's when you see the success. It makes you feel good. We were just talking in the parking lot. I had worked with a young. He's 26 years old now, and he's giving back. He's working in the field. So
cool.
and that doesn't happen all the time. But again, I know we're off a little bit, but those are some of the success stories that you see by working with different agencies.
Happy endings.
It's a good thing.
Cool. Now, I know this isn't on the cheat sheet, so if we don't want to talk about this, we can easily change the subject.
Okay.
But, in talking about the partnerships and the resources available, who funds all of this stuff?
Well, it's the state. It's the state. The state, at this point right now, the state recently, I think it's been in the news. The current, Governor Baker, he's put in over $100 million worth of additional services to DCF to hire additional caseworkers and case managers, and there's been a lot of work done in the last year and a half. They're really, and again, I'm not being political here, but I think that it's there. It is there, and you see it.
It is
when you're in the field, you see it. There's a tremendous change. So yes, the state is other ones that are really, that take care of the financing and the funding, and they do it. And it's not an easy job. It really isn't. It's complicated. It can be, a lot of times they're in the news for the wrong things, but there are also a lot of good things that happen that people don't hear about either, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So
well, that's why you're here. Tell me the happy stories.
We do get funding support from other
organizations.
Because I'm like, JRI is not a government
JRI is not a government
organization.
organization. We're a nonprofit organization. I think a lot of our programs are funded through state or federal programming, but there are also private resources, people who will reach out to us independently.
Yes.
There are different charitable organizations that will provide donations around the holidays.
Because I know you mentioned the party coming up, and I'm
Right.
like, okay.
Yeah.
and that's a good point that Courtney brings up, because the people in the community help us out tremendously. So I'm thinking big picture, how are children funded in the
Right.
system?
Okay.
But beside that, with the
Okay.
holiday
Yeah.
party coming up, or just during the course of the year, we have a tremendous outpouring
Oh
from
my
the
gosh.
community. We can put a Facebook, kind of a splash and say, hey, we need help with maybe some hygiene products. And all of a sudden, somebody from the community will show up with a big bag of toothbrushes and toothpaste. Our local sheriff, Bristol County Sheriff's Department, I
Yeah.
know that they're showing up on Thursday with a big amount of gifts. The Marion Police Department, we're going up there on Monday. They had, they had Santa Claus there this weekend, so they're donating. So
We've used Together We Rise. They're an organization that supports
Okay.
foster care. They provided duffel bags to us. So, I mean, there's a huge issue with kids when they move. Most of their stuff is hucked in a black trash bag.
I
And
remember
that's what
hearing
they're dragging
stories
it
about
around.
that.
So
yeah.
they're committed to providing duffel bags for kids so that their belongings are moved in a respectful manner, and their belongings are removed in a manner that makes them not feel like trash. So they provided us with these duffel bags that have blankets and books and teddy bears inside. We've also used Rise Up, I think, is the or is it Rise Up?
Rise Above, no, not Rise Above.
Together We Rise, and
Rise Above.
maybe
I
it's
think
Rise Above. They've helped provide camps for kids in the summertime. They host various events. The American Girl Store up in Natick. They organize an event at the American Girl Store where it's all foster kids, and they're invited. Typically girls, but there could be boys there too. They get a doll. They get an outfit for the doll. They have like tea and cookies, and it's just this like really lovely restorative event. They also host like a salon night for girls, so they do their hair, they do nails. Everybody feels good. So there are so many different funders and supporters and people that are really just, they say, oh, I can't do foster care myself, but I can get a pair of pajamas. I can donate some socks, and all of that is hugely helpful.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'm also my daughter's Girl Scout leader, so I'm sitting here going,
Oh, we've had
what we
Girl
can
Scout
do?
organizations, absolutely, yeah.
And the Cub Scouts.
And the Cub Scouts as well,
Got my
yes.
Cub Scout earrings on. So.
There you go.
Now, on the website, I saw something called the Family Forum. What is that? Can you tell me more about that?
So so Rachel Aruda, who's they call her the navigator. So she is an individual at JRI that is able to, if you have a question about services that JRI has, you can contact her, and she will get you to the right service that you need.
Okay.
But the Family Forum is something that she chairs. And I mean, and what she tried, and what I just recently actually joined a couple of months ago. But what we're trying to do is get caregivers and families together to be able to help in develop certain programs that would help a family out. So, for instance, if you had a child who is in residential care, you might have that family come to the Family Forum and talk about what would work with a family? Like, how can a family work with the child in the residential facility to make that stay for that child a little better? Again, partnering with the family. And I met with Rachel on Friday, and it's something that, and again, it's been in existence for about a year, but they're really working on expanding it out a little bit more. It's really
So like a networking thing?
It's kind of a network. I want to say it's a networking. In my conversations with Rachel, it's something that she wants to be able to. Right now, it's she's kind of working in. It's a smaller setup at this point, but they're looking to expand it out even more. It's been very successful. We have in the meetings that I've been in, there are a number of families who might have experienced children with autism,
Okay.
and they're a support for a family member that might
Okay.
go to the meeting. Or they might have another family member who has had some difficulties in working with school systems and is an educational advocate. She'll offer some support to to somebody who might come to the forum. It's a great opportunity. It's something that's in constant development, always being improved upon. One of the things that we were talking about is policies and procedures. What is there a policy or procedure that we might want to change, in working in residential or working in foster care that might be able to get the family more involved? And that's something I know that in foster care we've been working on, is to be able to really work with families. So it's a great opportunity. I know it's something that Rachel has been working very hard on, and and with all of the family members and all of the members of the forum. So
Now, is the forum strictly families within the foster care system, or do you have?
No, it's throughout JRI. So,
okay.
So again, because JRI is so large, so for instance, if you had somebody, a family who might have a family member in a residential facility that JRI runs, that family member would be welcomed into the family
I
forum.
wasn't sure if they pulled in outside resources like other partnering organizations, or
I
if it
don't.
was
They at this point right now, I think that might maybe be in the future. It's a possibility. But again,
because like you said, it's still really new.
Yeah, I mean, it's something. I think it's a work in progress at this point. But it's been in existence for over a year. And again, I'm relatively new to it. But for an instance, I was in a situation where foster care was not represented. So I bring a foster parent who brings his experiences to the to the forum, and it's a great opportunity. It's something that our CEO I know is totally supportive, Andy Pond, and it's something that I have found in the meetings that I've been at, the families really enjoy.
Cool. Now we only have a few minutes left, so can we talk a little bit about how someone would contact JRI to utilize some of the services you provide? I mean, as we mentioned, it is so vast. How would somebody navigate and realize what the best resources
I would say
are
the
for that?
easiest way to get a hold of Rachel, and they call her the navigator.
navigator.
She's the navigator.
Okay, she's the navigator.
It's the navigator at jri.org.
So her title really is
It's
navigator.
the navigator. Yeah, she is the navigator.
Wow.
So, for instance, if we, and here's a perfect example, if we get a referral from somebody who's interested in being a foster parent and they contact Rachel, she'll contact us and say, hey, Bob, Courtney, we have somebody who's interested in being a foster parent, or can you help me out in, figuring out, the DCF system? Is there somebody that we need to contact? And I know that she fields more than just foster care calls.
Yeah.
She fields
If
anything.
we had a family that we were working with, we've got their child in placement in foster care, but we identify that there might be a need that the family has, we could reach out to Rachel, and she could help see if there are supportive
Or like you
services within
mentioned, the,
JRI.
Advocate for IEPs.
Right, an
Absolutely.
educational advocate, somebody who's working in the homelessness world that we don't have a lot of experience in that area, but we could connect this person to somebody who really could direct them to the right place, could provide them with those services. So navigator@jri.org is the best way to get to the right program.
And I can't emphasize enough that JRI is large. So foster care is only that small portion of
little
what
tiny.
Yeah. So JRI is just extensive throughout throughout Massachusetts. So if there's a service that somebody in the community needs and they're not sure how to get it, the navigator Rachel will get it. She will get that information. Trust me. So.
Now, in the last couple of minutes that we have, I'm just thinking, with your experience, I'm trying to formulate a question. It's not coming to me. Where do you see the organization? Where do you see your department? Where would you like to see your department going in the future? What direction?
Well, at this point right now,
That's a good question.
yeah, it is. I think Two things: growth. We certainly want to be able to, gain more foster homes so that we can serve more children. There's a lot of children that just need good, safe homes. Our goal again is to get beyond the Boston area, to work our way up north. We like I said, we were talking a little earlier. We had 26 referrals from the the Lynn, Methuen, Framingham area. I was up in Lawrence and just a couple of weeks ago, and the need is great up in that area as well. And then also within our organization in foster care is to work with families. It's to be able to get those children back home to their families. That's the goal. To work with the family on intake and throughout the process, if appropriate. There are some families that unfortunately, child might not be able to go back to the home, but for those who can, that's the goal. Get them back home. Partner with our foster parents, partner with us as a foster care agency, and let's get your child back home. And partner with DCF, of course, absolutely.
Do you have anything?
I second that.
Okay. Didn't want you to feel left out.
Thank you.
But I do really appreciate both of you coming tonight and sharing with me some of the information. I have the little wheels turning, little hamsters running. Thank you very much. I hope you have a wonderful time at your event.
Oh, it's a big one. We're looking forward to it. We're tired. We'll be tired.
You'll be tired. So thank you very much for coming, and hopefully we will have a sequel in,
Excellent.
I think we said May.
May, National Foster Care Month.
Okay, and I also want to thank everyone at home for tuning in this evening. Hope you found our program as enlightening and our conversation as interesting as I have. So have a wonderful evening, stay warm, stay safe, and I will see you around town. Good night.